Hi, my name's Ben Clark. I'm going to talk to you about violent video games. Here's my audience member, Michael. To start out, I'd like to talk about a study out of Iowa of 130 different research reports on more than 130,000 people worldwide. It concludes that exposure to violent video games results in more aggressive, less empathetic youths. Today, my goal is to inform you of the effects of violent video games on these teens and youths. Violent video games are all around us and are becoming more realistic on a daily basis, thus making it more difficult for children and young men to distinguish appropriate responses to playing those games. I've played violent first-person shooters for over 9 years and can personally vouch for several of the side effects noted by Dr. Craig Anderson, who I will talk about later. I've also taken a course on understanding video games at Texas Tech, where this topic was discussed frequently. I will start by defining a few terms, and then I'll tell you what makes a video game violent. Then I'll move on to the effects of violence on the players, and finally I will discuss the proof. Violent media is anything that depicts intentional attempts by individuals to inflict harm on others. This individual can be a non-human character to a real person or anything in between, thus making Saturday morning cartoons with Mighty Mouse or Roadrunner hitting Coyote with a frying pan as being considered violent. Aggression is any behavior intended to harm another individual who is for all intents and purposes, motivated to avoid that harm. Violence refers to extreme forms of aggression, such as physical assault and murder. All violence is aggression, but not all aggression is violent. So what is a violent video game? Well, typically it's going to be a first-person shooter. It has killing as the main aspect of the game, and it glorifies the death of an opponent. Some examples of these are Mortal Kombat or Tekken, and some first-person shooter examples are Call of Duty or the Battlefield games. So then the question is, what effects do these games have on the players? Well, there's definitely an addictive part to it. Oftentimes the players find themselves avoiding their own life by playing these video games and submitting themselves to a different world. Aggression is seen a whole lot while they're playing, especially when there's something frustrating going on in the game. Problem solving is really skewed, and rationality of peaceful solution. Anger is exemplified with lower tolerance to things that could be considered annoying, and there's definitely an antisocial effect. My prop here is this headset with a microphone on it. A lot of computer players use this little device, and it allows the person to completely exit the area that they're at by putting on the headphones and being completely involved in their own game, and the sound pretty much overwhelming any sort of reality that they would otherwise be experiencing. So what is the proof? Well, Columbine is a perfect example and one that's used a whole lot. The Columbine shooters played Doom, a first-person shooter at the time. They even went about modifying Doom to have two specific main characters that were loaded out with weapons, and they had the targets in the game as unarmed civilians. And they essentially fantasized killing innocent people, which is what they ended up acting out in their own school. Some direct behavioral signs are being overly critical, being fault-finding, becoming nagging and whining. And I know that I became a little bit of a whiner when I would play some of my first-person shooter games. Sarcasm, prejudice, and temper flares are all things that you can find. Dr. Anderson, who I was talking about before, is quoted as saying that violent video games provide a forum for learning and practicing aggressive solutions to conflict situations. Violent games are proven to be more stimulating than shows or violent movies. They're more interactive, and they allow the player to make violent decisions or non-violent decisions, but most of the time they're going to go with the violent ones. Dr. Craig Anderson also says that exposure to violent video games directly causes increased aggressive thoughts and behavior and decreased empathy and pro-social behavior in the youths exposed to them. The games are highly competitive, and they teach the youths to compare themselves to others by numbers, such as the number of kills made in a game versus the number of deaths received in that game. And these games also create a false illusion of importance due to the amount of time and full involvement required to become good at these games. In conclusion, violent video games are corrupting the minds of young men, and it has many side effects. In my own experience, like I said, I played the Halo games. I played the most recent one for about a year and a half, and I would become very angry at the game for things that I didn't really agree with, and they were completely out of my control, besides just not having done as well as I could have done. And I did not like how angry I got at that game, and it took me a long time to realize that wasn't who I liked being. And I can only hope that other young men in the world can make the same realization.